Number 1, Joe Delaney, the ultimate sacrifice. It was the summer of 1983 in Louisiana, the kind of humid heat that makes the air feel heavy. Joe Delaney was only 24, a Pro Bowl running back, a father of three, and the kind of man teammates described as gentle even when he wasn't wearing pads.
He didn't worry about Joe himself. He just worried about making the people around him happy. That's just the type of person Joe was.
He was spending the afternoon near a park when he heard it, the sound of children screaming from a pond nearby. Three boys were in trouble, struggling to stay above the water. Joe couldn't swim. Everyone around him knew that. But without a word, he kicked off his shoes and ran straight toward the water. Witnesses said he didn't stop to think. He just jumped in. He managed to reach one child and push him toward the edge before the current pulled him under. When rescuers arrived, two of the children, and Joe, were gone. The NFL lost a young star that day.
This is a positive thing for everybody. Even though he died a hero.
But what lingered wasn't his stats or his highlights. It was his heart. The president honored him for his bravery, and the Chiefs retired his number. But the real tribute has come from every person who's ever heard his story and thought about what they might do if they heard those same screams. Joe couldn't swim, and he still went in. That's not football heroism. That's love, the purest kind. Number 2, Christian McCaffrey, the Castle Rock Rescue. It was 2017, a quiet afternoon in the Colorado mountains. Christian McCaffrey was just out for a hike with his family, taking in the view from Castle Rock. One of those peaceful moments where life slows down for a little while. Then it happened. A sudden yell, the sound of rocks tumbling, and the world changed in a heartbeat. An elderly man had slipped off the trail and fallen nearly 20 feet. His grandson's voice broke through the silence, calling for help, panicked, terrified. Christian didn't wait for anyone else to move. He ran toward the edge, shouting for someone to call 911. When he reached the man, he was barely conscious, bleeding, his breathing shallow. McCaffrey knelt beside him, steadied his neck, and just kept talking. Soft, calm, constant. Anything to keep him awake until help arrived. Doctors later said the man had broken bones, internal injuries, even a brain bleed. They said he wouldn't have survived if Christian hadn't acted so quickly. But for McCaffrey, it didn't end there. He sent the family signed jerseys, stayed in touch through recovery, and even visited once the man was well enough to smile again. On Sundays, people cheer for Christian McCaffrey because of what he does with a football. But on that mountain trail, there was no crowd. Just a man who refused to stand still when someone needed saving. Number 3, Blaine Gabbert, the helicopter rescue. In 2022, Tampa Bay, a helicopter loses power midair and crashes into the bay. A family of 4 is trapped in the wreckage as it begins to sink. Nearby, Buccaneers backup quarterback Blaine Gabbert and his brothers are riding jet skis. They see the helicopter drop from the sky. Without hesitation, they race toward the debris. The Gabberts dive into the water, pulling passengers out of the wreckage one by one, seconds before the entire aircraft sinks beneath the surface. When police arrived, the family was already safe on shore. The Tampa police chief called Gabbert's actions textbook heroism, awarding him a civilian life-saving honor typically reserved for veterans or first responders. Gabbert shrugged it off, saying he was just in the right place at the right time. But the truth is, most people in the right place never do what he did. Number 4, Mark Andrews, saving a life at 40,000 feet. It was a calm morning in 2023, somewhere high above the country, when the quiet hum of an airplane turned to panic. A passenger had collapsed in the aisle, motionless. Her pulse was fading fast, her breathing shallow. A few doctors on board jumped up to help, working quickly, trying oxygen, checking vitals, but nothing made sense. The woman's heart rate dropped to 35 beats per minute. The air inside the cabin changed, that strange, heavy stillness that comes when fear fills a room. Then Mark Andrews stood up. He didn't come rushing or shouting. He simply stepped forward and asked one question. "Does anyone have a blood sugar monitor?" The crew hesitated, unsure. Mark reached into his bag and pulled out his own. He'd been living with type 1 diabetes since he was a kid. He knew these signs like second nature. The reading flashed on the screen. Dangerously low. They gave the woman orange juice, glucose packs, anything sweet they could find. Slowly, her pulse began to climb. Her color returned. By the time the plane landed, she was stable, alive. And doctors confirmed later that without Mark's quick thinking, she wouldn't have made it. He never bragged, never wanted the spotlight. When reporters asked, he said quietly, "I was just one of many who helped." But the truth is, in a crowded cabin full of strangers, it only took one person recognizing what others couldn't. and deciding to act. Sometimes heroism doesn't look like a big play or a loud moment. Sometimes it's just being the right person in the right seat. Number 5, Peyton Hillis, a father's sacrifice. It was a perfect Florida day, clear skies, calm waves, the kind of morning that makes you forget how quickly peace can turn to panic. Former Browns running back Peyton Hillis was on the beach with his family, watching his kids laugh in the surf. Then he heard the scream, sharp, terrified, unmistakable. A rip current had formed out of nowhere, pulling his young son and niece out to sea. Peyton didn't wait. He didn't even think. He sprinted into the water. The current was brutal, but he fought it anyway. He reached his niece first, pushing her toward shore. Then he saw his son, face down, motionless, eyes rolled back. He grabbed him, dragged him in, step by agonizing step. And when his feet finally hit the sand, his body gave out. Peyton collapsed in the surf, unresponsive. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital. Both lungs collapsed, his kidneys failing. For 10 days, he lay in a coma, his body broken, his life hanging by a thread. When he finally woke up, he was weak, barely able to speak, but his son and niece were alive. Later, when reporters asked what went through his mind that day, Peyton said softly, "If one of us had to die, I'd have chosen me." Most people talk about sacrifice. Peyton Hillis lived it. Number 6, J.J. Watt, the builder of hope. In 2017, Hurricane Harvey slammed into Texas, drowning Houston in days of relentless rain. Streets became rivers. Entire neighborhoods vanished underwater. Hundreds of thousands of families lost everything. Texan star J.J. Watt watched it unfold from afar and could have done what most people do: post, donate, move on. But he didn't. He started a small fundraiser with a modest goal of $200,000, just hoping to help a few families get back on their feet. Within weeks, that number turned into $37 million. Watt didn't hand it off to someone else. He loaded trucks himself, delivered food and blankets, and walked through neighborhoods where the smell of mud and loss hung in the air. He listened, he hugged, he handed out hope. Even after the cameras left, he kept going, paying hospital bills in secret, funding youth programs, rebuilding playgrounds so kids could laugh again. He never made it about fame or football. It was about home. Years later, people in Houston still tell stories of the day J.J. Watt showed up at their door, not as a superstar, but as a neighbor who refused to let them rebuild alone. Number 7, Damar Hamlin, the miracle that saved millions. It was January 2nd, 2023. Monday Night Football, millions watching, Bills safety. Damar Hamlin made what looked like a routine tackle, something he'd done 1,000 times before. He stood up, took one step, and then he collapsed. No pulse, no movement. On live television, the world watched as paramedics rushed the field. 10 minutes of CPR, players sobbing, praying, holding each other. The stadium had fallen silent, the kind of silence that hurts. And then, against all odds, they got his heart beating again. He was rushed to the hospital, placed in a medically induced coma, machines doing the work his body couldn't. Days later, his eyes opened. A thumbs up from a hospital bed, and the entire football world exhaled at once. But that moment wasn't the end of his story. It was the beginning of something bigger. When Damar recovered, he turned his survival into purpose, launching campaigns for CPR awareness and AED access, helping schools, gyms, and stadiums get the equipment that once saved him. The man whose heart stopped in front of millions became the heartbeat of a movement. Proof that miracles don't just happen to us. Sometimes they happen through us. Number 8, Dak Prescott, turning pain into purpose. For Dak Prescott, heroism started with loss. His mother, Peggy, was his best friend, until she died of colon cancer when he was in college. It broke him. But instead of retreating, Dak turned grief into action. He founded the Faith Fight Finish Foundation, offering free cancer screenings across Texas and beyond. One day he convinced members of the Cowboys staff to get checked too. An employee named Ted took the test, and doctors discovered stage 2 tonsil cancer. It was caught early enough to treat, and today Ted is alive. All because Dak used his platform to make sure nobody else was blindsided like he was. He lost his mother, but saved countless others. And if that's not real-life heroism, nothing is. Football gives us speed, strength, and spectacle. But moments like these show what really matters. These aren't just players, they're fathers, sons, neighbors, and friends. The kind of people who run toward danger when everyone else runs away. If you want more stories of NFL greatness and heart, hit subscribe, drop a like, and stick around. The next chapter of football history is already waiting.